So before we move forward here, what we need to do is to actually add another button at the bottom here. So this button is going to be next button. That way, when you click on this button, we're going to go ahead at least to iterate through all of the questions that we have. I think that's probably the best thing to do at this point. So let's go back to our activity main XML here, user interface, and I'm going to add this other button. But notice the thing here is that this other button, the next button, I'm not going to put inside of our linear layout. I'm going to put that outside of our linear layout because I want it to be at the bottom. Remember, if I put inside of this linear layout inside here, notice this linear layout is orientation horizontal, which means it's just going to go ahead and put to the right here, and I don't want that. Okay, so let's go outside here. I'm going to say button, make it wrap content as such, give it an ID. I'm going to say next button such. Very good. Let's give it a text here that would say string. Do we have next button? We don't have next button. It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and say string anyway. Say next text as such, and we're going to extract this, and the source is going to be next like this. Let's go to our string and make sure, right, this should just be next. I made a mistake. I may have added something extra. Let's see, it was all the other way around. So the name is going to be next underscore text because that's the ID, and here's going to be next. All right, there we go. Let's save that. We should have a little problem. That's fine. I'm going to say next text like that. Okay, very good. So now we can see here we have our next showing. Let's make this bigger. There we go. So we have the ID next button. That's great. Let's come to main, and we're going to make sure that we have that button as well. Private button. We're going to call next button as such. Okay, very good. We have that. So if we save this and take a look, we should see our next button there. Take a second, and there we go. Next button is working good. Now, this is wonderful and all, but I want to show you something different here. When it comes to buttons or any other view, there are different levels or different kinds of buttons. What I'm going to show you to do now is what we call the image buttons. I'm going to say image. There we go, image button here. As the name implies, an image button allows us to actually add an image to our button. How do we add an image to our button? Well, we go down here and say source, and we can add an image that we want for it to show. Now, the cool thing here is that we can also, as we've been doing, we can get images from our drawable. We can even get from our Android namespace and so forth. So I'm going to say Android as such, and I'm going to say drawable next media like that. So like that, you can see now it says next as like that. And just like that, you can see now we have this very cool looking button there. Okay, so it looks like a button that you can press and it goes to the next item. Notice at this point we don't need to have this string next here, so I can get rid of it or leave it as it is. Doesn't matter. So I'm gonna just get rid of it and see that we have another little missing content description warning here. What that means is the following. Anytime we add an image of some sort in our user interface, we need to make sure that we add a content description. What this is it allows for people who are visually impaired to be able to know what the button does and all sort of things. Because if a person is visually impaired, Android has the capability of allowing people who can't see, visually impaired, to be read what the buttons, what the things are inside of the application, right, in the user interface. So that way they know what they're dealing with and they're able to proceed that way. So this is important to always think about, add into your application, because that would help the visually impaired people. All right, so in this case here, I'm going to say description or content description, and I can add a string that we added before, just says next. So in this case here, for content description, we have the next that says just next. So if a person who is visually impaired comes in and is using our applications, the moment it gets to this point, the app will tell them this is a next button so they can do something with it. Okay, there we go. Very good. So I'm going to come back here to our main activity. We have our question bank. The next thing we need to do is to make sure that our next button, just like our true button, is all set up. So let's come down here and I'm going to say the same thing, next button, set on click listener, pass this, which means I can come somewhere around here, say break, okay, say case, r.id next button, I want something to happen here. What I want to happen is that I want to go to next question as such. Now, how do we go to the next question? Well, to go to the next question, we need to think a little bit about what's happening here. We know that our bank of questions, it is indeed an array, and that was intentional because we want to make sure to track each question, right? So remember correctly, an array starts with index 0. So all of these items are inside of an array, and each one of these has an index. So this will be index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So in order for us to actually keep control of our index, because we want to make sure that each time we run our application, each time users tap on next, we want to be able to control, okay, what index or what question are we on at this moment. And the only way we can do that is if we have a way in which we can get the current question index, meaning the current index of our array, which in return will give us the question. Okay, so at the top here, I'm going to create another private, and this time I'm going to say it's going to be an int, right? Because it's going to be an index. I'm going to say current question index, and I'm going to start it at 0. Okay, initialize it at 0 as such. So now we can use it to control which index we are currently in. So coming down at the bottom where we say next here, this is where the magic happens. So we click, we want to make sure that we know at what index we are at. So in this case here, it's always starts at 0 because we said so, right? So the first index is going to be 0, which means if we pass in inside of our question bank, it's going to return this question here. So we know that, but we want to make sure that each time we click on that next button, we want to make sure that we are incrementing the counter, the index, right? That way we get the next question. Now, what we can do here to increment, we usually say, we can go ahead and say, for instance, current, like this, plus plus. Okay, so we're incrementing by 1. In fact, if we save this, I'm going to say log D, this tag here, for now I'm just going to say current, and I am just going to pass our current question ID or index like that. Let's save and see what's going to happen. Oh, we have a problem. Let's see what is the problem. Let's go to run. Right, on null object reference. Okay, I think we forgot to write. Aha. Notice the problem. This is very good. So this next that set on click listener is wonderful. However, we forgot to actually go and grab it. So I'm going to come up here and say next button is equal to find view r.id.next button. So such. Let's see, find next button. Oh, there we go. The problem is that we changed a few things, right? This next button is no longer just a button per se. It is indeed an image button. Types are very important. Remember in Java. So if we change the type, because we did that inside of our activity main XML, it's no longer just a button, it's an image button. That means we have to change also in our controller here. So we change to image button, which means if we come down here, let's see, question, find, that's good. Next button, that should be good. So everything should be good now. Save and run. We should get rid of that error that we saw. Very good. So it's running perfectly. And let's see how this works. So I'm going to click here and it says 1. Keep clicking. It says 2. Very good. So our index is indeed incrementing. Very good. But you notice as I continue adding, clicking, it's going to go and increment as many times as we want. So that's good. But you will see what's going to happen here. So the idea again is to make sure, let's go back here, that as we click next, this has to change. Right? This is what? This is the question. This is the text view. So we need to make sure that our text view, this question text view here, which is instantiated here, that we want to make sure that each time we click on it, we want to add the question so we can show it in here. How do we do that? Well, simply we can come down here and say the following. I'm going to say text view or question text view dot set text, and I'm going to pass what? Well, I'm going to pass the bank question bank, and I know it's an array. Therefore, I can go ahead and pass our current question index, and then I'm going to go and access what? I'm going to access the get answer like that. All right. Very good. So I'm going to go save this. Let's quick run here. We should be able to see something happening. Very good. So now it has that text that we added, hard coded it. Let's go say next, supreme law. And let's open here so you can actually see the click is 1. Okay, so you can see what's going to happen here. So I'm going to continue and then go to the next one. So this on click 2, index is 2, and it's changing, right? This is very good. We're going to continue. We're going to continue. We're going to continue. We're going to continue. And we have a problem. Let's see what the problem is. Well, it says here, you've seen this before, array index out of bounds exception. Length is 8, index is 8. And all this gibberish that's happening here, and we are in despair. What this means is exactly what I was trying to hint at you. This works fine if we know exactly how many items we have inside of our array, which has questions. Because at this point here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. After 8, we have nothing, right? The array is going to say, well, our question bank doesn't have any more than 7 questions or 8 questions, right? So at 8, things are done. However, in our code here, that's a bug that we have. In our code here, we're saying just keep going and pass that index here and just keep fetching things. Well, at index 9, it's going to go say question index 9 and goes here and looks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? So 0, 1 through 7 to 8 doesn't have the 9th item. Hence, we have this ugly error here that says array index out of bounds exception. How do we solve that? Well, to solve that is very simple, okay? Because we want to make sure that we are always within the size of our question bank so that we don't run into these issues. To do that, we're going to do something awesome here. So inside of our question index here, I'm going to say is equal to, I'm going to pass in the current index question. I'm going to say +1, just like what we did, but I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to also say module or remainder question bank dot length. This would make sure that always this current question, once it gets to the end, right, of our array, in this case question bank array, once it gets to the end, to the length of the items that exist inside, it will go back to 0. So let's do a little bit of detective work here to see what's going to happen. So we said that current question is 0, starting with, but each time we click, we're going to go take that 0, the first part, add here. So 0 plus 1 is 1, right? 1 remainder, let's say the length is 8 of our question bank. Well, 1 remainder 8 is going to be 1. Why? Because 8 goes 0 times into 1. And to get to 1 is going to be 1, right? And do the same thing. The second time, this is going to be 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, remainder 8. Then it's going to do the same. 2, remainder 8 is going to be what? It's going to be 0 again, right? Because 8 goes into 2 0 times, but the remainder is going to be 2 because we need 2 to add to get to our 2. Okay? So if remainder is fuzzy, go back to the Java section where we talk about remainder, and you should have those details there. But in any case, at the moment we get at the highest level, let's say our question bank is 8, the length, and we get to 7. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 remainder 8 is what? Well, 8 divided by 8 is 1, right? So the remainder is 0. There we go. That means we go back to 0. So now we are safe to always make sure we never go out of bounds. Okay? We are safe now. There we go. All right? So if you save this, let's go run again. All right, so let's see how this works. So click, there we go. And let me show there's that click there so you can see what's going to happen here. So we're going to keep going. Okay, we changing all the questions. Everything is great. There's 6. There we go. 7, and we go back to 0. Right? So meaning it goes to the first question again. So we can keep going, and this will never, ever break. Ah, there we go. And so we save ourselves here. And the cool thing is we're able to go and fetch all the questions that are changing as we click here. And that's wonderful. So in the next video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to then check the question. So if we are on this question here, if they say false, we're going to go and check to make sure that this is indeed false. If it is indeed false, then we're going to say that's correct to the user. All right. So I'll see you in the next video.